We're going to talk about custom formatting. We're going to first cover the basic way to do it, which is to customize an existing format. And then we're going to talk about the symbols that you can use, zeros, hash marks, and question marks. And there are 6 other options other than the standard symbols, those 3 symbols. We're going to talk about the 4 zones of a format, custom or otherwise. We'll talk about the fact that you can use colors in your custom formatting. And there are a lot of options when it comes to customizing dates and times. So I've got what looks like a rather busy schedule here, because it is. And I'm not going to go through all of this in detail at any rate, but the intention of this is to have this information available for somebody to use as a reference. But having said that, when you're going to customize a format, probably the easiest way to go about it is to select an existing format and then customize that. So if we're going to build a custom format, we need to open up the Format Cells dialog box. And the best way to do that really is to open it up with the dialog box launcher in the number group, and that way we'll be on the number tab when the dialog box opens up. There's a group on here called Custom. I can left-click that, and I've got a whole laundry list of pre-established, pre-built custom formats. You can select any one of these, find out what it does, and then customize it using some of the rules that we're going to cover in this movie. So when you select it, you can go up here and edit that text field, which is the custom format, to build your own custom format. I'm going to cancel out of that. On the schedule, the brown-filled cells, it says displayed as. I've actually used some text formatting to get this to display, so I didn't have to set up all of these custom formats. So I kind of cheated a little bit, but that's what would be displayed if those cells were formatted using the formats listed in the schedule. So in the case of using zeros, hash symbols, and question marks, if you only use one zero, one hash symbol, one question mark, in the first 2 instances, Excel will display the whole number and ignore anything to the right of the decimal place. Using a question mark, Excel actually rounds the number when it displays it. Focusing on the zeros, the first example has only 1 0 to the right of the decimal place, and Excel only displays one number to the right of the decimal place. The second example has a placeholder for 2, so both numbers to the right of the decimal place are shown. The third example has 2 zeros to the left of the decimal place and 3 to the right. Acting as placeholders, Excel will either display the number or display a 0. And again, if we use this formatting, this would actually be a number displayed in cell D10. I've actually used a text entry to show the formatted result. But even though there's a leading 0, you could still perform math functions on this had this cell been formatted in the way that we're showing. Going to the next example, there's 3 decimal places to the right of the 0, and again, it's a placeholder for a number, and where there isn't a number, there'll be a 0. The hash symbols work a little differently. Where there's a hash symbol, it's a placeholder for a number, but it won't display a 0 or a hash symbol for that matter. If there's a number there that's non-zero, it'll be displayed. So 451.50 becomes 451.5, even though there's 2 hash symbols to the right of the decimal. If that number was 451.54, we would see 451.54 displayed. If it was 451.545, we would still see 451.54 displayed. The hash symbols enable you to add comma separators. So a hash, comma, hash will get you a comma separator, and then you can add to that point hash hash in this case, so you get the comma separator and a placeholder for 2 numbers to the right of the decimal place. In this case, there's only 1. Question marks, arrowing down, are a placeholder for a number, and when there isn't a number, the question mark will leave a blank space. So we have 2 question marks to the right of the decimal, and 451.5 is still 451.5. After the number is displayed, there'll be a space between the number and the right side of the cell. In the next example, there's just 5 spaces after the number. But again, other than the fact that I formatted this as a text, to display the result, this would still be a number using that formatting option. We have 6 other options or special cases, sort of, that we can utilize when we're building a custom format. The first is using a comma to round to either the nearest thousand, the nearest million, or as many commas as you want to round to that number, billion, trillion, and so on. So a 0 followed by a comma turns a million into 1,000, and followed by 2 commas turns a million into 1. That you can combine with something else I'm going to show you in a second to actually display an M. So not only can you round, but you can also display an M to designate million or a T to designate thousands. The next example will format your number and then leave a space after that number. This is sort of similar to the question marks. You'll see this formatting in the accounting formatting where the positive numbers leave a space so that the negative numbers that use a parentheses to designate the negative will line up with the positive numbers in the cell. In the next example, we can actually fill the space available in the cell with some kind of symbol. In this case, I've chosen a 0, but you could put another symbol in there and it will display that symbol, that number, that letter across the entire width of the cell. So the number 500 becomes sort of no number at all, and we have the cell displaying nothing but 0, since that's the symbol I've used in the formatting. In the next example, you can actually have text displayed in your numerical formats. So 50 becomes 50 space enclose in quotes. So any text you enclose in quotes will be displayed as text. And again, this will still be a number, ignoring the fact that I've used text to display the result. In the following example, this sort of harkens back to the first example on this list, where you can use a backslash character, in this case M, to designate millions. So you can use this in combination with the first one, the comma, to actually round your result to the nearest million and designate it as millions using backslash M. And in the final example on this list, you can actually format content in your cell and have it become invisible using 3 semicolons as the format. When you're building custom formats, and you can actually see this in action in some of the custom formats that come with Excel, there's 4 zones of a format that you can take advantage of, where the first zone is the positive number, the next is the negative, the next is how zeros are displayed, and finally, if the entry in the cell is text, you can determine how the text is displayed. Each one of the zones is separated by a semicolon when you build your custom format. And we can also use colors in the custom formatting. If you enclose those colors in brackets and you define the color before you define the format for the number, you can use these 5 standard colors in your custom formatting, and we actually see this at work in some of the custom formatting that's already established by Excel. So we see the first zone, which is the positive number. The second zone, which will be red, is the negative number. And finally, we have a number of different ways that we can format and display dates and times. And I know it looks a little bit jumbled, but there's a consistency to this scheme here, where 2 characters, in this case it's a Y because we're trying to format years, are 2 digits, and 4 characters in this case are 4-digit years. For months, 1M, of course designating months, shows 1-digit numbers as 1-digit numbers. 2 M's will show the 1-digit numbers preceded by a 0. The 3 M's will show the months using the abbreviations that you see. 4 M's will actually display the entire month using no abbreviations. And 5 M's will just use the first letter of the month. And it works this way for days, hours, minutes, and seconds. And finally, times can be displayed in any one of a number of ways. H is hours. We can show AM, PM. We can add minutes to it and show AM, PM. And we can add seconds. And in this case, we don't get the AM or the PM. We get A or P. Elapsed times are displayed using brackets to show either the hours elapsed, including minutes, the minutes elapsed, including seconds, or the seconds that have elapsed. So that's custom formatting. We first looked at the basic way to go about it, and that's to select a custom formatting that already exists and reformat that to display how you want it to, using zeros, hash marks, and question marks. We also have 6 other options that are sort of special cases that we can put into our custom formatting. When we're building custom formats, we have 4 zones we can utilize to display differently positive, negative numbers, zeros, and text. And we can also use colors in our custom formats by enclosing red, green, yellow, cyan, magenta in brackets before we define the way the number is going to be displayed. And we have a number of ways to display dates and times.